I'm Math Guy Steve. Let's try solving this equation. Now, when solving quadratic equations or equations that have a degree of 2, the highest power of x is 2, there's plenty of methods. The quadratic formula, factoring. Another method that we can try solving equations like this is completing the square. So let's try just using that method. It's not always the most efficient, but we need to know that tool of completing the square. So let's try it. Now, when completing the square, our goal is to kind of get the x stuff together. And then if I'm using that to solve an equation, the reason I'm getting the x stuff together in kind of a bubble squared is so I can use the square root property of equality. Okay, so let's try doing that. Now first, to get the x stuff by itself, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides here. Okay, so that'll give us 5x squared plus 26x equals -5. So just to gather the x stuff. Now, this number in front of the x squared is kind of in the way. Okay, so we also want to get rid of that in completing the square. So let's divide everything by 5. All right, that gives me x squared plus 26 over 5x equals -1. Got it. And now my goal again is to get the x stuff in a bubble squared. So I need x something squared, okay? So how we find that number is by taking this number, we call b, and taking that number and dividing by 2, okay? So if I divide that by 2, then this is 26 over 5. Divided by 2, we get positive 13 over 5 is what I'll put in that bubble. All right. And so now, but to compensate for that, that kind of changed the equation really. And so to compensate for that, we'll take this new number 13 over 5, square it, and add it to both sides on the line above in order to not change the equation. Okay, so 13 over 5, if I square that, that's 169 over 5. And so, 169 over 25. And so we're adding 169 over 25 to both sides of the equation on the line above, really. Okay, so what does that give me then? Okay, so I get x plus 13 over 5 squared equals, now we need to add these two numbers, okay? So we'll find a common denominator, right? So that's what, -25 over 25 plus 169 over 25, okay? So that simplifies to we get x plus 13 over 5 squared equals, combining numerators, now we get 144 over 25. All right. Now the whole reason why we would do that is now that we have this something squared, we can now square root both sides. Now, anytime you put your own square root into an equation, don't forget that plus or minus. Okay, so put my own square root, don't forget the plus or minus. All right. So that gives me x plus 13 over 5 equals plus or minus. And now when I square root a fraction, I can square root the top, square root